desire and no intention to impose our form of government on anyone else.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing? I forgot to press the button. There we go. All right. We are broadcasting live in the United Public Radio Network, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Pardon me. We're also broadcasting live on social media. This show is brought to you by the Experiencer Support Association. I'm your host, Ryan Stacey. I'm a licensed private investigator, and as the director of investigations for the Experiencer Support Association, I use my investigative skills to dive headfirst into the hidden mysteries of UFOs, paranormal activity, and consciousness phenomena. Glad to be here. Thank you for tuning in. All right. Are you guys ready? Let's see any comments there. Hello, Lisa. Good to see you. Good to see you. All right. Here we go.
The Ultraspectrum, putting it all together.
Okay, so last week's episode, I talked more about what TESA was and what we have to offer. This week, we're going to talk about my Ultraspectrum Classification System. Then after today's episode, I got no more excuses or delays. All right, I need to show you my work. I have to do these investigations and whatnot. But I wanted to do 3 operational episodes for those who are new to what I do and what I've done. So that way, if you're tuning in for the first time, episode 1 is about me, and episode 2 is about TESA, and then episode 3 is about the system that I'm using, and then everything else after that is just going to get into the cases and how I classify it and where everything else is coming from. Okay, so you can catch the replay on those episodes wherever you search for things. Okay, so my classification system. If you have a comment, you're watching this live, you want to talk or share, please do so, and I'll address them as I see them. And all right, so I'm going to share my screen here. Our website is called the experiencersupport.org. If you're tuning in for the first time, I'm going to put this into the box here for you guys. And I'm going to show you how to get to the Ultraspectrum Classification System. So if you go to Investigations, right down here, the Ultraspectrum Classification System is on this tab here. Okay. I did explain on last week's episode a brief analysis as to why this happened. There is a link here. So this following description is part of a long featured article, which can be found here. The article will provide context behind the creation of the system and why we are not using the Hynek Valley classification system any longer. All right. If you were watching last week's episode, you will understand. I explained it a little bit here. I am going to share that link in the comments here for anybody who's interested in reading that now. Now, if you're on radio, you're not going to see this classification system and the pretty columns and everything else that I have here, but I will try my best to explain this in detail that is understood. So for those of you that are familiar with the Hynek Valley classification system, this article here explains what it is, what they've done, and it also talks about John Keel and what he was trying to do. And I've incorporated his work as well into this Ultraspectrum classification system. For some reason, the pictures aren't working. So with that, I do explain the why. I do explain my logic and my understanding as why this system needs to be changed. Now, for you UFO people who are like, oh, who the heck are you? I can say heck on radio, right? I hope so. Let me know if I can't. Please understand that I've been doing this for a long time. I've been with MUFON for a long time, and I'm not the only one in the world that knows that the Hynek and Valley classification system needs to be upgraded. But I did create this as an homage to the work that they've done, and I also have permission from the family themselves. Paul Hynek, I spoke to in Great Lakes. He showed it. He looked at it. Sorry, I showed it to him. He looked at it, and he gave me his blessings. So I'm not looking to replace the Valley classification system, although it would be nice. I just simply want to change the language and the understanding of how we classify things as investigators and researchers, so that way we can include the paranormal and psychic phenomenons in this. Okay, just want to take a look here. No comments? All right, good. So there are three parts of this. There's going to be the evidence type classification system. There's an evidence rating scale that I use. And then there's a category type. They all work together. There's an explanation here. I will read this and explain it to you in great detail. But if you really want to know how to use it, you can ask me how to use it. This is the language that I'm going to use for future episodes. So it's important that you guys understand what I'm talking about. All right. So similar to the Hynek classification scale or Valley classification scale, we have some similarities here in terms of proximity. Okay, so we're going to, let me see if I, I'm just going to read this out because I explained it a little bit better. So the system has two groupings that work with each other. The top group identifies our proximity level while establishing a level of supporting evidence. The bottom group identifies root word categories designed to remove archetypical labels so that all communities can agree on one category, and leaving each faction to their own interpretation on the belief of what the event may be or how it was caused. So starting with the top grouping. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can, let me read this while you look at it. So let me just fix this up here. I'm going to make this a little bigger for you. Let me see if I can do that. Make that bigger. So sorry guys, I'm just going to zoom in here. There we go. All right, you can see this. And I'll scroll across as we look at these things. All right, so starting with the top grouping. First off, we stopped using the word encounter. The word implies a negative event. It implies a negative event. In our studies over the last 3 years, we have collected enough data that shows that the majority of the events reported are considered positive. So instead, we are using the word experiencer or experience to provide an unbiased, and neutral expression of every event. So building off the Hynek's close encounter, our close experience model, we have added additional proximities to reflect other distances. So in that, we have, where's the first part here? It's up here. So, of course, my screen messes up. All right, so we have what's called an extreme close experience, which is less than 100 feet. And then we have a close experience, which is 100 feet or greater, less than 500. Then we have a remote experience, which is more than 500 feet, which this is common with the Hynek scale. But then we have this mental experience, meaning it happened in the mind. Okay, this is important. It can happen in the mind, and we can't dismiss that. We shouldn't dismiss that. Okay. So moving along, you will have to select a subclass of either A, uninvited, or B, invited. So right here, here's your subclass, invitation. Okay. In our research, we have noticed that there has been a variance between unexpected events and intentional invited events, both of which must be investigated differently. Okay, so I'll clarify that. So it's important to know if you are intentionally doing a meditation and then you receive the vision before I investigate, versus I'm going about my day and then all of a sudden something happened to me, something came over, and then this internal experience had happened. Okay, so that's why we're measuring that. Once the class has been established based on proximity and the experiencer's intent, we then apply a level rating based on the strongest or best piece of evidence that can reinforce the witness testimony. So we have levels here. Okay, so each of these pages have the same levels of evidence depending on your proximity. They're all the same. That doesn't change. Okay, if you're using this scale. So we'll start with level one, which is the method. okay, in which the event was sensed. Okay, so we have A, B, C, D, E, F. So we have sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and mind. Okay, so it's important to understand how the event occurred. Did you see it? Did you hear it? Did you smell it? Did you taste it? Did you touch it? Or did you imagine it? Were you dreaming? Okay, this is including the mind. All right, evidence level 2 is called trace evidence. So was anything left behind? Analogical, memories, trauma, psychic abilities. So this is a stronger piece of evidence because there is something that may have been left behind from this level 1 experience. I'm hoping that makes sense. Level 3 is material evidence. The one that we hope we always get, the one we always want, is, something physical in our hands. Demonstrative, documentary, physical, or forensic. So demonstrative could be anything such as pictures, video. Documentary could be documents, declassified documents. Physical could be, an implant or a rash or a burn or anything of that sense. And then forensics, of course, is biological. DNA, hair samples, anything like that we can use to collect evidence. Then we move on to the other ones here. Sensory display. No, we're not there. So then we go on to evidence level 4, which is corroboration. And it's 2 to 3 witnesses, and then B is 4+ witnesses. Okay. And then evidence level 5 is contact, back and forth communication with validation is A, and B is immediate reactive response. So back and forth communication with validation would be an example of a parent, like say in the paranormal spectrum, we were in a seance and you're like, if you're with me, blow this candle out. And if that happens, then we could suggest that it is a use level 5. Okay, for the classification, because you have back and forth communication with validation, but you have to be able to confirm that it's paranormal, not just the wind, okay, or air in the room, somebody moving their hand around like I do, talking with my hands, and things like that. If you get an immediate reactive response, something instant, like the CE5 stuff, you wish and everything comes forward, or you sense it and all that other stuff, that could apply too. But in my evidence scale, all of these things need to be present in order to be classified as level 5. So you can't just have back and forth validation if I'm going to classify it at level 5. I need to have your method. So what sense was used? I need to know if anything was left behind, any trace evidence. Analogical is drawings, okay? And drawings are important too, even though you don't get a picture. If you can draw what you remember, it helps. It goes a long way. Do you have material evidence as well? Something physical that you could share. And then you have multiple witnesses, and then you have communication with it. Then you get the classification of level 5. Whereas the Hynek and Valet classification allows you to go to the high level immediately, but it implies that it's more severe when all that evidence below it doesn't actually exist, which is a contradiction to the scale. So the evidence must stack to build its case as we work through the levels, and that's why it's designed that way. Okay, so let me go back to the reading here. No questions? Okay, good. All right, so within these levels of evidence, there are subtypes designed to define specifically the type of evidence collected. Also, it's important to note that with this scale, the CE5 adaptation from Dr. Stephen M. Greer can still be used properly. We are of the opinion that human-initiated contact with back and forth communication is the highest level of evidence we currently can receive with minimal argument. I will note at this time that Greer got flack for altering the Hynek-Valet scale at the beginning, and now it's a prominent item in the scale. So now let's look at the bottom grouping. Okay, so once I determine in terms of evidence what type of case I have, like this is how close it is, it was invited or uninvited, this is how, all these other things that kind of gives me an idea of the level of importance to determine which cases to work on, similar to what MUFON does. Okay, evidence rating, do I have that? Okay, so before we talk about the group rating, let's look at my evidence scale. Okay. Again, if anybody's in the comments here and want to say hello, let me please ask your questions. If I'm saying anything that doesn't make sense to you, that you don't like, also say that too. I'll address it. You can challenge me. Like I'm totally ready for whatever. Okay, so my evidence rating scale, as I use it, is there's 8 levels of evidence. So let me see if I can zoom in here for you guys watching. So when I categorize the type of evidence that I receive, because it's important, so level 1 I consider the worst. It's the worst you possibly get, and that's no evidence at all or an audio clip only. Okay, why is that the worst? Because no evidence, got nothing to work with, and audio only doesn't really help. Like an EVP with just the audio only to go off of, and you tell me that this is somebody, this is a ghost saying this and nobody's in the building, it's not really a strong piece of evidence because there's nothing else that collaborated around it to earn that trust that it wasn't some human manipulation. All right, Ray, I see ya. Hello, good to see ya. So then we get into level 2, which is bad, which is better than worse. And that's a third party or non-original material. So oftentimes, it's like, hey, investigate this. I saw this on Facebook. Or here's a picture that's been edited that shows the item that I'm talking about with a circle around it so you can emphasize on what I'm looking at. That's actually bad evidence because you've altered it. It's not the original piece of evidence, and that makes it difficult to use. So I consider that bad, but it's better than worst. Okay. Moving forward, fair, drawing only. I consider this fair because most people aren't able to take pictures at the time that these events occurs. And if I take in consideration that most of these events are happening in the mind, a drawing may be the only opportunity that they have. Okay. So having a drawing is better than nothing. It's not bad. It's not worse. I think it's fair. All right. Good. The original photo only. So you're actually able to take a picture of it. Then we can actually suggest that it's in this third dimension. When you draw stuff, we have to consider 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th dimension, all that other stuff. And you can imagine how hard it is to prove that in the third dimension for those, third dimensional beings. So that's why I have it organized in that way. Level 5 is better than good. And that's the original video only, or original photos with original video. Okay. So what I'm looking for is a level 5 for me is something to use, because if you send me stuff that I can't use, there's no point in me doing the work because we're just having a conversation. I'll teach you how to get better evidence, and hopefully the next report that you make, there's a better piece of evidence. This is part of that educational part. In order for me to do what I do, I need you guys as experiencers who are making reports, reporting better, whether it's to me or any other organization or whoever you trust to look after your cases. The evidence that you collect needs to improve. So I'm trying to educate people on how to collect better evidence. Okay. So then we can do our job better. Great is the original media and drawings, because when you take a video, you may not actually be able to characterize in that video what you saw with your eyes. You take a picture, how many times have you videotaped something and you look at it and it doesn't give it justice? Like the Aurora Borealis had happened, all those pictures that were taken, how does that compare to actually seeing it with your own eyes? Right? So you want to have a combination of those two, because there might be some details that were missed that you remember that's prominent in this experience versus what the camera was able to capture. And then we can put those things together. Moving on to greater is one of the above. So everything from levels 1 through 6 and government documentation. That would be awesome that you've seen something that matches to something that the government has saw. But again, correlation does not equal causation. Now, be careful with that. And of course, the best evidence in my consideration is government documentation with the original media and drawings. So that is what we're hoping for. That's disclosure. The idea of getting a level 8 is not going to happen. I don't think so very soon, but it's possible. I'm usually averaging, to be completely honest, around level 3 at the fair level. I want to help, and that's what most people are doing already. And what I want to do is try to improve the reporting to have a level 4 and up. I'm not aiming for 7 or 8. I'd be happy to settle at 6. All right. That's the evidence that gets my attention. Everything else, it's hard. It's not that I don't believe you. It's just the time and the and energy that is put into it with a raw piece of evidence that you can't do anything to support the statements. It's deflating. It's hard. I want to represent. I want to assist with all these things, but these are the things that I need. And if you don't know I need these, then we can't help each other, right? Waiting for time here. Okay, we're good. So let's move on to the second grouping here. Might have to zoom out a little bit so you see the whole scale. All right, so I will read, excuse me. All right, so the bottom grouping, this group is the most important. This is the group we use to properly classify an event after it has been investigated. Over the years, many people have been raised separately and differently with beliefs and ideas around the phenomenon. These groups are designed to organize the phenomenon into 5 main categories that can be equally accepted by anyone who investigates either the UFO, paranormal, or psychogenic phenomenon. It even applies to crypto and paracryptozoology. Okay, I had to make sure I pronounce those right, or else Alex will turn around on his grave there. So let's start with sensory display. Ray, if you got any questions since you're in the chat? Well, let's start with sensory display, which also include aerial activity or paranormal activity. So I'll play the aerial activity video.
Aerial activity, sensory display.
All right. So the event category is sensory display. The type is aerial activity. Subtypes, we're going to get into that. Okay. But I'm just going to read what it explains here, and then I'll elaborate. So sensory display. It has been determined by our research that both the UFO and paranormal phenomenon can be observed by triggering any of the 5 human senses, including the 6th psychic sense. Regardless of this archetype you believe it to be, we all can agree that the event has triggered at least one of our senses before its display. The sensory display category is divided into 2 types, aerial activity and paranormal activity. The event either took place in the sky or somewhere else. This is important for investigating orbs, as they belong in both categories depending on the individual's belief. Regardless, all parties who will have to agree that the sensory display was aerial activity. Going further down the line on aerial activity, we have 2 subtypes, which is machine and light. In the ufology world, this translates to UFOs and UAPs. It's very important that we do not label anything until it's properly investigated, and even then we must be careful not to misidentify any event. And then the same can be done with paranormal activity type, which I have sight, sounds, smell, taste, touch, and mind, which are similar to the senses. Scrolling along here, the archetypes, I put this in place as examples. So for a sensory display aerial activity, it's a machine or a light, depending on the characteristics. So a machine would be a UFO, a drone, military craft, or UAP, etc. Anything that has those those characteristics that support some sort of mechanic engineering. I don't know if that's a proper word for that. Then we get into paranormal activity. Now, not everything in the paranormal realm is in this category, because it's also part of the rest of the system. So once we established, whether you saw it, you heard it, you smelled it, you tasted it, you touched it, you saw it in your mind. Once we establish that, then we can figure out an archetype for it. So that can include things such as poltergeists, a disembodied voice, so EVPs, vapors, mist and shadows, temperature changes, and sensations. Okay, this gives credence to the possibility that we are hypersensitive and we may be experiencing stuff in another dimension. Okay, I'm trying to give more credibility to that possibility, but you still have to provide some sort of physical evidence in the third dimension to stack up these alternative and further deeper dimensions. I hope this is making sense. I never really had to explain this. All right, so moving on. We are now on to visitation, I think, right? Yeah, visitation is next.
Visitation, intent implied.
All right. So, visitation, with the variance between negative and positive perceptions, we must take into consideration that some of these events occur mentally and need to be investigated differently than those receiving physical visitation. Also, like encounter, we choose to use the word visitation over abduction to remove the stigma that all visitations are intended to be harmful to the experience. The subtype for this category is a choice between uninvited and invited. This is important to note when working with someone familiar with meditation or astral projection techniques. All right. So this is intent implied, meaning that someone, that this being of some sort has intended to show itself or is intended to do something to you or in the environment around you. Not to be confused with beings observed, intent unknown. Angela, good to see you. Hello. Angela, so we have a new Patreon, new account if you're interested. I remember you were supporting us back then. But good to see you. Angela is an experiencer, so is Lisa. Ray, I don't know if you're an experiencer. You've never shared. So we have a visitation, which means the intent is implied. So we assume that they're there for a reason. What does that mean? They grab you, they take you, or they talk to you. Those are examples. We need to split it up. Was it mental? Meaning a mental presence? Did it happen in your mind? And just because it happened in your mind, it does not mean you're crazy. I need to understand that it's possible. Don't assume we don't know. We need to figure out where this information is coming from. Because there is science to support that we, especially psychics, can use their mind, telepathy, and all these other things. It's very possible that we're seeing these things in the interdimensional spectrum, the ultraspectrum, and not actually in the physical world. Is it physical? Well, maybe it is physical. Maybe you believe it to be physical, but it could still be mental, which might be hybrid. And that also could be a physical presence. You see a being, it's as real as Adam. You know for real that it's there. There's no doubt about it. And then all of a sudden they speak to you with their mind. So there's some mental presence as well. So that might be considered a hybrid. All right. Was it invited? So were you doing something intentionally and asking for a response? Or was it uninvited? Were you going about your day and something happened? So examples of that is abduction, possession, download, contact experience, etc. Okay. You guys are watching this on the replay or even right now, if there's other categories that can go there that can help, we can add to this. All right, let's move on to beings observed.
Beings observed, intent unknown.
All right, so this is where I get into a lot of situations is where people will see things and they assume that they see them as well. So for this part, we're assuming that just as much as you see them, they may not know you see them, or we don't know if they see you. Okay? So I'll read what we put here. So this category, beings observed, this category houses 3 subtypes. Well, I guess I've added since then. Cryptid, paracryptids, and entities. I've added since I wrote this. So there's cryptid, humanoid, paracryptid, and apparition. We have created the paracryptid type to separate the archetypical monster from possible biological creatures yet to be discovered. Currently, we do not have subtypes for these entities. However, we do plan to add them in the future once we have investigated more events in this category. And there's evidence of that. I've obviously haven't updated this article, but I have updated the system since then. So what I have here is cryptid. So these are examples like, pick your poison. Bigfoot could be paracryptid if you're on that spectrum. It also could be a cryptid. So it depends on whether or not you believe Bigfoot is associated with paranormal UFOs and the like, or it's a biological entity that is from here on Earth. Either way, you get, a classification is the same based on a belief. Bigfoot, I would consider to be a cryptid until I have evidence that shows that it's paracryptid, meaning, something that's not biologically possible. So an example of a paracryptid could be like Mothman or a vampire or chupacabra or something like that, right? Humanoid are people, obviously humans or human-like, and apparitions. So within that, the subtype, we have bipedal, quadruped, aerial, aquatic, hybrid, transmedium, and unknown. So I want to classify the type of things that they are. So a cryptid, so Bigfoot, for example, will be cryptid and a bipedal because it stands on 2 feet, according to the legends, or if that's what the object that was described. If you have a chupacabra, for an example, that would be a paracryptid, and that would likely be a quadruped because it walks on 4 feet, and things like that. So aerial could be like an angel, and that could be an apparition, a humanoid, depending on what you look like. Aquatic could be Loch Ness, so you can call that paracryptid or cryptid, depending on your biological, if you have an anthropology background. Hybrid could be a combination, so like the Mothman, you got a humanoid and that has wings, right? Transmedium could be apparition, right? Something that is transmedium, that's invisible, some sort of unknown. So, maybe the person who made the report did not clarify enough, or there's not enough evidence available to make a classification of it, and things like that. So examples of beings that could be observed in those categories are Bigfoot, black-eyed children, men in black. So Bigfoot could be cryptid, black-eyed children could be humanoid, men in black, humanoid, extraterrestrial, Mothman, Jersey Devil, elves, reptilian, winged beings, ghosts, shadow figures, elementals, interdimensional beings, and agents, etc. So I would consider those a being that is observed, but these are usually with intent unknown. You see Bigfoot, maybe he's interdimensional, maybe he's not, who knows? But does Bigfoot see you? Right? So the intent is unknown. If Bigfoot comes up to you, then that moves up to visitation, intent implied. Physical presence, perhaps. Was it invited? Well, did you provoke him? Then you get what you get. Uninvited? Run. So this is how it works based on, these are just examples on how we can run these scenarios in terms of things. Hybrid is in here. I don't think I talk about hybrid, do I? No, I don't talk about hybrid in that report. So hybrid is sometimes they get complex cases and the experiencer isn't willing to separate their events. So if you see Bigfoot, he's on the ground, there's a UFO behind him, and you can hear voices in your head. Okay, that's like an extreme experience. You have a UFO sighting, you have psychogenic experience, and you have it being observed. All of those 3 things have to be investigated separately. But if I can't get you to do an investigative report on the being observed separately on all these other things because you're unwilling to donate your time, or it's just not worth it for you, or for whatever gets in the way to actually give good information for the reporting system, then I have no choice but to group it into a hybrid. And that could be activity and visitation combined. Activity and an ability combined. Ability and visitation combined. And what I call the paranormal hat trick is when you have activity, ability, and visitation combined in one experience. I do not want to use this category, but I have to use it because a lot of the time people are not willing to do more than one report. And that's just the way that it is. And unfortunately, that becomes bad data. So if you are listening to this and you're considering reporting and you have you look at the scale and make multiple reports separately, because there's going to be something in the reporting system that will ask you to do something. And actually, you know what? That should be next week's episode, is we're going to talk about the reporting system and how to actually make a report. Angela says, right on, question. Finally, I get to talk to someone. Angela says, I've seen 2 Bigfoot. Listened to an encounter today that helped me make a connection between the two with relation to the body shape and what angels I saw them from. Oh, angles I saw them from, not angels. Awesome. 2 Bigfoot. Listened to an encounter today that helped me. So that encounter that you listened, Angela, and you made that connection, it's a connection, but is it connected? You understand what I'm trying to say? Like, you may have associated things you've already known and things that you believe. So you got to be careful there with making this connection. But you know your experience, you know what you saw, you know what you learned. I don't. I'm speculating off of doing a statement analysis on what you've provided here. But I'm interested to know more detail about that. And you've made multiple reports. So has Lisa. I haven't gone to them. I know, I apologize, but the intent is to get back into them because there's been just so much crap reporting that it's discouraged me from getting into it. But I got to get through the weeds. I got to get through all that other stuff before I can get to actually your cases as well. And your cases are like a paranormal hat trick. Like, there's so much stuff going on in that. And I've been busy with life, to be completely honest. I know you're listening, and to everybody else who may be listening to this on the replay. And for those of you who know me personally, I'm a dad now, so I gotta do those things. I gotta do dad things too, and I gotta do all these other things. So I apologize for not getting to these cases as soon as you would like them to be. It's still in progress. It will still happen. I assure you this. But if it's an emergency, you got to call 911. You got to go call a friend. You got to do these things, all right? But if you don't mind waiting, even contributing to my research and stuff like that, I don't like talking about my work too much because mostly, people just rip it apart anyway. So I'm going to, put these books out, put these things out, and you guys can, go from there and whatnot. And you get what you get, basically. All right. So Angela clarifies, it says 2 different Bigfoot, but explained how it filled the window like it did. Interesting. Very interesting. I'd like to talk more about that. Angela, we're looking for guests on our podcast, Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. If you're interested, let me know. You can talk to my good friend, Danny Whitson. Okay, so Lisa, same thing for you. You haven't been interviewed by Danny. You've been interviewed by me a few times. It might be a good show. All right, so let's move on to psychogenics. And no, forget the esotericism for this video, but it's psychogenics.
Psychogenics and esotericism.
I took a little too much time there for my drink. Sorry. Okay, so psychogenic is a category to group events that occur within the mind. Events are so real to the experiencer with corroborating pieces of evidence that can be verified. This category is essential for our experiencers who may have developed or are developing psychic abilities. Even though we can't see into the mind, at least with this category, we can now group the ones with strong evidence and actually include parapsychology in our research. The types measured in this category are either external or internal effects, meaning their psychic phenomenon were done either telepathically or telekinetically. Subtypes are added to further break down the categories. So let's take a look here. All right. Lisa says, let's stop here. I'd like to have an interview with Danny. Okay, so you know what, Lisa? Let's take a break here from this. We'll come back to it. If you guys go to our website and click on podcasts, okay, Skeptical Sleuth is here, but I don't interview people. But we do interview people now on the Beyond the Tinfoil Hat podcast. So there is a link here at the bottom of the page where you can book yourself in right here for the podcast if you have a story to share. Okay, so Lisa, please click on this link. I'm putting it in the comments for you, and anybody else who sees this on the replay. Radio, unfortunately, I got nothing for you. Return back to camp. Okay, I've been watching Survivor lately. It's a good season. All right, so let me put that. Let's get back into this. I just realized I'm watching Survivor and I say all right. Jesus. Okay, so psychogenic. Let's take a look here. So your main category, event category, is psychogenic. Your type is external effect, internal effect, or hybrid. Is it intentional or unintentional? Okay, so an external effect. So did the use of the mind affect something in the three-dimensional world? Okay, that's what gets that classification. Did it affect you inside? That could be mentally. That could be like depression, PTSD, some of those mental quote-unquote illnesses. I don't call them illnesses, but that's the term that they use. It's not an illness. I think it's an ability or a gift that's misjudged. But I might be a little biased on that. But those are essentially what's going on there. And then hybrid could be a combination of the same. You see a being in the room, and then you hear a voice, and then next a TV flies across the room. So you have an external effect and an internal effect because you hear the voice. You don't see the mouth move. But so it has to be classified as hybrid. So intentional, unintentional. So did you just witness it? Right? Do you have the ability to go to the space, but they don't know you're there? Or was it, intentional? So they know you're there. And did they do it as a reaction? Or is it unintentional, like I mentioned before? So examples that fit in that category is psychometry, telekinesis, astral projection, mediumship, precognition, retrocognition, remote viewing, hypnosis, dreams, meditations, download, telepathy, psychic ability, clairvoyance, ESP, visions, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, etc. Okay. My experience, I would classify this as psychogenic. I know that it was internal because I was seeing it in my mind. But it also has an external effect because I created the map with it. I created a graphical image. So for those of you who are catching this on a replay or haven't seen this before, you go to the symbols and icon page on our website right here. This is my experience. Saw this in my mind before I put it into the three-dimensional world, which makes it external. So evidence can transition into different dimensions as well, depending on how you stack the case. It's harder to prove this interdimensional stuff, but it's easier to swallow when you can support it with the physical. You have to have both. You can't just say, "Oh, I know what I believe. I'm a psychic and I talk to ghosts." Well, that's great, but that's great for you and your community and what you're doing. But you're selling yourself short if you don't try to bring that mental into physical manifestation. But if your game isn't to prove disclosure and get an answer for everyone, and you're just happy with doing the work that you're doing because then I support that too, because you're good. You're just focusing. You're a light worker. You're doing what you have to do. Not everybody needs to get this empirical evidence that gets disclosure. I wish I could stop fighting for that empirical evidence. I really wish I could just believe and focus and be like, yep, but I am a skeptical sleuth, right? So here we are. All right, so the last category in the spectrum is residual evidence. Let me see
here. Residual evidence.
All right, so we explain residual evidence as this category groups any event that leaves traces behind. This includes implants, markings, crop circles, and even animal mutilation in some cases. And then and thing at the end, again, we don't know who or what is causing the phenomenon, which is why we are measuring the events and the evidence. Okay, so for residual evidence, we see external effect, internal effect. Okay, so a crop circle would be an external effect because the crops were affected. You know, external could be three-dimensional. Internal could be fourth dimension and beyond. Right? Hybrid, you used your mind and you created crop circles. That's an example. But I'm interested in knowing what was affected. Okay, was the animal affected? So that'd be cattle mutilation. Environmentally affected. That could be crop circles. Human affected. Right? That could be burns and rashes. Look at Falcon Lake incident here in Canada. Machine affected. So did, you know, EMP or things like that. And this also helps me investigate the possibilities of what it could be. And as an investigator, what I need to do is rule out known things, which means I need to spend a lot of time learning about everything. I'm a master of nothing, but I'm jack of all objects. You know, I'm trying to figure it out based on what I know. I definitely could use some support from some experts, but unfortunately, that's what I'm working with. So if you're an expert and you're listening and you think you can help, you know, send me a message. admin@experiencersupport.org. All right, so I've mentioned this before. Missing limbs, implants, markings, cattle mutilation, crop circles, EMP pulses, extreme weather conditions, mechanical failure, or manipulation, etc. All right, so I only got 10 minutes left. So if anybody has any questions, please put it in there. But what I'm going to do, let me see, because I do have to say some stuff for this stuff. Might as well say it now. So we are looking for people to assist in disclosure. Okay, if you're helping me, I need help transcribing and cataloging Canadian declassified documents. So if you're interested in supporting me and helping with that, please send a message to admin@experiencersupport.org. If you're a writer, if you're you want to contribute some work, please submit your request and we can set you up as a writer. If you're interested in starting podcasting or you want to be a podcaster and you want to expand to a larger audience or do what you're doing somewhere else, let us know. And that's you can assist people. We have some programs that we've done in the past. We could find some people, just let us know. We have the opportunity for you experiencers to express yourself. We just don't recruit. We work with the people that want this information or want to assist. Okay, so at admin@experiencersupport.org, let us know what you're interested in, how we can help, and then most importantly, what you want in return. Okay, not everybody works for free. Some people do, right? If you want to be paid, then you can be paid, but we need to negotiate that. If you want to volunteer your time, we can volunteer your time, but we need to negotiate that and understand the terms and the requirements and make sure it's all okay, right? It could be a combination of both. It depends on what you want. But we leave it open that if you're interested, you're gravitated towards this is something that you want to be a part, you need to ask. I will not invite you. That's not the rule. That's not what I feel. I'm not recruiting. The right people will come at the right time for the right reason. So if that's you, send us a message, right? Tomorrow night, Beyond the Tinfoil Hat with Danny Whitson, 6 p.m. Eastern time, right here where you're watching. If you're on my Facebook page, you won't see it. It is on the TESA stuff and the UPNR network, so you'll find it there at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And I have a Patreon, so if you go patreon.com/eattheworld, it's on the banner below as well. You can also donate and support the mission as well. Everything that is earned, it goes to keeping the website and everything running and all this stuff for free. Okay. So D has a question here. Why you want disclosure if disservice to humanity? I'm not quite understanding. Yeah, why you want? So I'm assuming that's you or do. Why do you want disclosure? It's a disservice to humanity. Now, disclosure for me has already happened. I think what everybody is fighting for is confirmation that what they experienced happened. Okay, and so they have disclosed what they know about UFOs, but they haven't disclosed what they know about extraterrestrials. We're not fighting that. They haven't disclosed what they know about ghosts and apparitions and stuff. There is evidence of them experimenting with psychological things like MK Ultra and things like that. It also happened here in Canada and actually in my hometown, Penetanguishene, where I'm living, Penetang, there's a mental institution used to be called Oak Ridge, where they also partake in the MK Ultra program. So there's lots of things like that. Is it a disservice to humanity? I don't think it's a disservice to humanity to get more evidence. Disclosure is happening. Information has been provided. There's just a group of people that really do not believe that the government is telling us the truth. And that's because the government has lied in the past. And the government will lie about some things or omit some things. So it's tricky. But the government is doing a justice, for my opinion, by providing a report. Now, is it accurate to what's really going on? Well, there's claims that exist in the past and all these other things too that still don't have evidence. So it's tricky. I gotta be mindful of my time here. D says, yes, disclosure happened to all of us as abductees, we know, but for humanity to receive disclosure is going to bring about a much bigger problem. It will destroy everything. It absolutely will. Let me just come back here. It absolutely will destroy everything. Religion is gone. The stock markets will go down. Money, currency, all these other things, control is gone. So in order to get disclosure from our government or confirmation, it's going to require, they're going to have to get something out of it because they're going to lose all their control. So this is why I heavily believe that the UFO phenomenon or the UFO movement is government orchestrated. It's human design. It's reverse engineering of somebody else's technology. That doesn't necessarily mean extraterrestrial. It could be German technology. It could be Russian technology. There's other organizations in the world that may be smarter than us in different things. You can still reverse engineer stuff. Look at Operation Paperclip for you Americans. And for Canadian, it's Operation Matchbook, the same idea. We have German scientists as well, not just the Americans, but we don't talk about that. And, and things like that. Now, if these extraterrestrials exist, if the shape of the earth is not what they say and NASA is lying and all these other things, we get into this fringe stuff, the earth is flat. If those things are possible, that's freaking huge. But the government still has control of it. The government will decide what they release and when to release it, but it's also up to us to respond a certain way. Understand? Look at the pandemic that has happened and look at how majority of the human race responded to a global threat. If the government has a choice to withhold that information, it's a good choice. Because we respond in a negative and aggressive way when we're hurt, when we're scared, when we're full of fear. And if they have the choice to prevent that information from coming out, then it's not that serious. That part, the machine part, the craft part, okay? They also may be working with extraterrestrials, sure. But what power did the humans have over the extraterrestrials that we could prevent them from interfering and doing all these other things? That doesn't seem plausible to me. Okay, this is a heavy topic. I'm running out of time. What may be happening, I believe that it's a combination. For those who have the gift, for those who have the ability to connect to the ultra spectrum, or may know it, may not know it. Source is deliberately communicating with us because we are the experience behind it. All right, so we are the voice. Experiencers are disclosure. So it's a little bit more complicated than that. I just want to I have to wrap up, unfortunately. And I'm not able to clarify and explain my full thought. But I'm hoping we can continue this conversation elsewhere. You did say, Dee, that the government has no control. Well, no control over what? Government has to have control. They've been controlling us all these years. They're fighting for control. But why are we rebelling? Because we believe certain things. But is it true? There's a lot of human complexity in the mix of this, which makes it hard. And it's quite possible none of these things exist. It's still a possibility. But just because the UFO subject that's in the news doesn't mean extraterrestrials. It doesn't mean aliens. It doesn't mean aliens. And that doesn't mean aliens don't exist. That doesn't mean ghosts don't exist. I heavily suggest with all my heart and being, with all the years of experience I have in this frickin' community of ufology, that this is a distraction. This is a pressure cooked plan to put weapons in space. Are they hiding the shape of the Earth? That's a possibility too. But why is that possible? Well, because there's more resources, there's more control, access to all these other things. So there's the possibility of there being more land and things like that. So it gets kind of ugly. Leah Dunbar asks she clarifies, where else will you continue this conversation? So you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/heattheworld. I'm usually I post regularly on there, and I'm trying to interact with the comments best I can. I'll be here next week, every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific. You can join my Patreon, and there's a private chat for members only, where you can talk to me on the regular. We can talk about what you bought for groceries that day. We can just have a chat and get to know me as who I am. And I'm spending a lot of time there because it's tough being this persona in which everybody wants me to be, this UFO paranormal investigator, UFO skeptical sleuth, and things like that. There's a lot of weight that I carry for these expectations that experiencers are putting on me, and sometimes I need a break. So I spend a lot of time on Patreon, just creating a members only. Those who want to support my work, those who want to support what I'm doing, those who actually care enough about me to get to know who I am. There's a chat there. So all those other things. Angela says experience exists. Yes, it does exist. It all exists. Leah Dunbar says, I think aliens could be seen as a derogatory term. They were probably here way before we were. So I got to play my intro video. I have to end here soon. So aliens simply mean not from this place, but not from what? North America? So maybe, what do we call aliens that come from Mexico? Or people that come from Mexico, aliens, and things like that. So in the flat Earth realm of conspiracy, they believe there's extra land that we're not exposed to. And it's possible that the extraterrestrials come from that land, extra land. And they would be alien if it's a label that's put on them because they're not from here. But if they are from here, they're not alien. All right? They're something else. So we're going interdimensional, perhaps. Well, we're going to continue. All right? So, remember where we're at here. So thank you for tuning in for this episode of The Skeptical Sleuth. We just got to get set up here to exit. Sorry, guys. I'm on a time crunch. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast and 107.7. I know I got cut out there. Tune in Tuesday, April 28th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time to catch the next episode of Beyond the Tinfoil Hat with comedian and magician Danny Whitson. Remember, one lie is enough to question all truths. Thanks for watching. Keep your eyes in the sky. And as always, lead the world. Peace.
If you want to really, really find out about Ryan, ask him about all his work and UFOs in Ontario.
Ryan is one of Canada's leading new UFO investigators. He conducts and oversees UFO investigations on a constant basis. He's compiled a tremendous amount of data regarding UFOs in Canada.
I have used his research extensively. He's much more than a one-dimensional character. He's an authority on UFOs and investigating them, Meg.
Wow!
really goes over how UFO investigations are done and what are some of the mistakes that people make when they submit evidence. For starters, don't edit your videos or photos before you send them.
He would come out with an annual report on not only the number of sightings, but how many were unexplained, unknown, or just, nothing could be said. What caused
If you
it?
want to hear more follow-up conversation between Ryan and myself, you can go to richarddolanmembers.com, where we have a candid conversation on ufology, the paranormal, and more. And remember, while we learn and grow and search for the truth, let's be good to each other.